Taryn Beeman has been a parent navigator at Airway Heights since the program began there, and he's been really successful at connecting fathers up with their children.
I understand there's been a program going on for a couple of years that has been helping parents in prisons to connect with their kids and navigate the system. And I'm also hearing that there's some possibility that that program is going away or has gone away.
Yeah, so there's been this program that DOC's been offering called the Parent Navigator program that's been available at Airway Heights and Purdy for parents who are involved in dependency court cases. Those Parent Navigator liaisons have been able to act as liaisons between court partners involved in dependencies in a number of different ways. And we recently learned that as a result of it not being included in this year's budget, DOC has opted to end those programs, unfortunately.
Can you tell me more about what roles that the parent navigators played and how they helped?
Yeah, I think they did a number of really important things. As a state agency, they were very helpful in queuing us in when a parent had a new dependency, didn't know what was going on, didn't have counsel appointed yet, or if a parent had lost the name of their attorney, they'd been helpful in letting us connect up those attorneys so that everybody was on the same page. Those cases, dependency cases, move quickly. There are federal timelines associated with them. And while they start as temporary involvement in a child's life, they can lead to a parent losing their child forever, which is known in case law as the civil death penalty. The parent navigators are really helpful in talking with DCYF workers, say if it was a new social worker who had never set up visits for a parent in DOC custody. They could help explain the policy and procedure of DOC to DCYF so they understood how to set up those visits. That's an important part of every dependency case. They were helpful in explaining to parents, making sure parents had copies of their court orders, understood their responsibilities that they had to do even while in DOC custody, helped them arrange for services and know what services were happening, and then also help them participate in meetings related to their cases. In DCYF language, we call those staffings. They're really important for outside of court for understanding what's going on in a case, making sure a parent knows what's going on, helping to identify relative placements where the child would feel more at home when they can't be placed with the parent, and kind of helping move the case forward so the case doesn't get stuck. They were also helpful at supporting parents so that they could appear via Zoom or telephonically at court hearings, including trials. When parents are more engaged in their cases, there are better outcomes for kids. Courts have more information, parties have more information. And I think as a result of this program ending, we're all going to have less information, and parents are going to have less opportunities if they are either at Airway Heights or Purdy to be successful at those cases and hopefully reunify with their children. There's a great community parenting alternative in Washington State that allows some parents that are DOC custody the opportunity to release to in-home confinement so that they can take care of a child. And so that was something that parent navigators that helped parents identify was when they could qualify for that and start that process. And a lot of the research around recidivism relating to cases shows the importance of family connection as reducing the risk that things will happen in the future around criminal activity.
That makes sense to me.
I'm just concerned that we're going to have a loss of information. The court's going to have a loss of information. Parents are going to have a loss of information. And court partners are going to have a loss of information, which could lead to more parents' rights being terminated and children not getting the support they need in these cases to be connected with their families of origin.
This Parent Navigator program existed kind of in pilot mode, is that fair to say? Because it was just in one men's prison and one women's prison.
Yeah, it was a new opportunity to try something out. It was modeled after a parent ally program that happens for parents that are not in DOC custody. Parent allies are parents that have successfully gone through the court system, have addressed their issues, and they now mentor and support other parents going through the system. It was a pilot to try out this model that had been shown to be helpful and evidence-based in supporting parents to be more successful and supporting courts to have more information on cases.
Even with Parent Navigator program formally going away, are some of the parents in our state prisons still going to have access to some of the help that they were getting?
There are some strengthened families caseworkers in some DOC facilities that have been very helpful in doing some of the things that a parent navigator could do. So I think on the plus side, that's going to continue in some places. But here's what's different. Those folks aren't parents that went through the court system. So even though they might have some of the information about how those systems function and have learned those things, they don't have the experience of being a parent that's gone through those systems. And there's something really powerful from lived experience folks being able to support other parents going through the system to let them know, I was successful. You know, you have opportunities to be successful, and let me show you how I did it. Strengthen Families is a wonderful program, but just because of the unique nature of parent allies, now that parent allies are going away, there's not going to be another opportunity for that sort of lived experience, pay it forward that comes from parent navigators.
There's a man named Taryn, and that's who is the Parent Navigator at the Airway Heights prison in the Spokane area. Tell me more about him.
Taryn Beeman has been a parent navigator at Airway Heights since the program began there, and he's been really successful at connecting fathers up with their children. One of the issues that has been acknowledged both statewide and nationally is that because of predisposition, like assumptions, one of the mainstream assumptions is that dads can't parent on their own. And Taryn's been a really helpful partner for helping support fathers to be engaged in cases and making sure that court partners understand how important it is for those fathers to be engaged in cases, making sure they understand that fathers that are at Airway Heights want to be engaged, they care about their children, and their children care about them. So he has been helpful in connecting folks up with community parenting alternatives to be released early. He's been helpful at supporting me to identify fathers that maybe didn't know that they had a right to counsel. He's been helpful at supporting visits and kind of like all those other things that I mentioned that parent navigators do. He's also been a community partner as part of like trainings and system stakeholder meetings so that folks understand the importance of fathers being engaged in their children's cases, even if they are incarcerated.
And Taryn has a background of having spent time in prison, right?
That's correct. And he has a background as someone involved in the dependency court system too. So he has that kind of combined knowledge of both systems that's been really helpful, I think, in engaging to support the dads.
So you mentioned that the Parent Navigator program applies to parents with a dependency case, and not everyone understands what that means. It's not that every man who's a parent in prison has a dependency case.
Right. So a dependency case is a case where the Department of Children, Youth, and Families has asked to take temporary custody of a child because they have a concern, and that's a court action. Under that, you are entitled to be represented by an attorney if you can't afford one. And as I mentioned earlier, it starts this process that can result in you permanently losing your child. I could give some guesses in terms of how many fathers are in DOC custody that have a dependency, but it would be a guess. Unfortunately, a Department of Corrections is supposed to track that information, and they don't have a really great way yet of tracking that. Some estimates are nationally that 7% of parents in a incarcerated state also have a collateral dependency case or the dependency equivalent. Some estimates are 30%. My understanding is DOC has been working with DCYF to come up with some sort of information sharing so that there can be a way to capture information like a parent in custody that has a child involved in a dependency. Because again, things happen in dependencies quickly. So we want to make sure as soon as a dependency is filed, that fathers know that their child is in care, that they have certain rights associated with that case, that their child has a right to be placed with relatives. So we want to make sure that fathers know that so that they know who is involved in their child's life and can be making recommendations to the parties or the courts around placement for their child. If dad's not available, where can we have a child be safe so that we don't actually have to have a government involvement, so that children can be free to kind of live their lives in a more natural setting? That's also one of the important things around dependencies. If someone can't be placed with a parent, you really want to make sure that that child is being placed with a relative or what we call a suitable other. So a fictive, potentially non-blood relative, an auntie, an uncle who knows that child. The research has shown that children are better off in those types of settings. Now, if a dad doesn't know their child is in foster care, then the father loses the opportunity to tell all the system partners, here's where my child spent their summers. Here's my mom's name. Here's my father's name. Let's make sure that this child has an opportunity to maybe go with them. Even though foster parents can fill really important roles in our system, they're not family. That's not a place where the child knows where the on and off switch is in the middle of the night if they need to go to the bathroom. We want to make sure that children have opportunities to have the most natural, family-focused, communal growing opportunities, even if a dad is not available because they're incarcerated. That's really better for kids.
What are we hearing about the reasons why the Parent Navigator program isn't going to be continued?
Well, my understanding is, it's been a tough legislative year. It's been a tough budget year. My understanding is the Department of Corrections had to make some tough decisions about what to suggest as options of budget asks. Because it was a pilot program, the Parent Navigator program was what's called provisoed, which meant that if DOC did not ask for the program to continue, the program was going to lapse and potentially no longer be funded. My understanding is DOC had to make some tough decisions about what they could request funding for, and they opted this time around to not request funding for the Parent Navigator program. So as a result, it was not included in the governor's budget, and it was not funded by the state legislature. My understanding is folks associated in family services were going to make recommendations that the Parent Navigator program should be refunded in the next fiscal year in the supplemental budget, which would mean that effective July 1st, 2026, that there could be a restarting of the Parent Navigator program. The governor would need to also include it in their budget, and the legislature would have to allot funding for that to happen. Then, right, Blair, it means that there's a year without the program. And so those parents for that year will not have the support that was provided with the Parent Navigators.
I'd like to ask you about the Washington Fatherhood Council and in what ways that you all have cooperated and what roles you see them playing that's been helpful in the fatherhood scene in Washington.
Yeah, I think that they are really an important partner in the work that I've been doing around incarceration in helping to educate the court system. I've been able to go to the conference that the Council puts on. I think that was a great opportunity to hear directly from fathers. They were able to share like both kind of the good stuff, like here's what you're doing well, here's what I need you to like address and think about, and here's how I need you to shift things, and really just emphasizing that fathers are fathers, right? They are important in their children's lives, and they should be important to folks like me that work in the public defense system that represent fathers and dependencies. So I've seen them really helpful in identifying how to communicate differently with fathers, and how to make sure there are services that are individually tailored to fathers. For example, making sure there's inpatient treatment for fathers that allows them to have their children placed with them. There's a number of providers throughout Washington state that will provide chemical dependency treatment for mothers and have their children with them. It's really important for fathers too, right? So I really appreciated them highlighting both what's not working well and what is working well so that we can try and build off stuff and correct problems.
Ann Stone and I have gotten to know each other better and better over the
Yeah,
years and kind of coming to trust each other's work more and more. Because, I exist in the advocacy realm, kind of playing this role as sort of a special interest or a citizen lobbyist for boys and men's issues across the board, with fatherhood being a subset of those boys and men's issues. Of course, Ann and the Fatherhood Council are basically an outgrowth or a project of the state government, Department of Social and Health Services. So their ability to advocate, to lobby for changing laws is much different from mine
right.
as an outsider and a citizen lobbyist. But it's been great to benefit from each other's work. And I wonder if any ideas come to mind from you as far as outside of this issue of the Parent Navigator program, maybe whether you've tracked any bills in the past or have any ideas for changes to laws or policies in the future that would be in line with both the mission of the Washington Fatherhood Council and that would be something, natural for Washington Initiative for Boys and Men to advocate on.
I think one thing that I had been watching was the last legislative session. There was a proposed amendment to the community parenting alternative. That amendment was going to allow fathers who had had a child born while they were in DOC custody to qualify for the community parenting and alternative. Fathers are not just important to children's lives when they were there when they were born. Fathers are important to their children's lives, period. And so I'm really hopeful that during the next one of the future legislative sessions, that we make sure that um, fathers have the same opportunities to be involved and engaged in their children's lives through the community parenting alternative. Another thing that I think advocates could be really helpful around is making sure that DCYF has funded enough services specifically for fathers. Under state and federal law, parents involved in dependencies are entitled to individually tailored services. And those are services to help them be better parents. So we have to make sure that those services are not just focused on moms being good parents, but also focused on dads. We have to make sure that the supports, the concrete goods that we pay for, we have to make sure that those things are being offered to fathers so that they have the same opportunities to parent children and get the support they need. In my space, as someone that acts in dependencies, I think that's some of the most important things that you could be engaged in. I think also really supporting DOC and DCYF to remind them that fathers are important in these cases. there are state laws that say that they should be tracking the number of incarcerated parents in Washington state, and we just don't have that yet. And I'm not sure what the breakdown is around that, but I know that we need to know who's in DOC custody because that helps us plan for how to support them. That helps us make sure that they have access to counsel. And I think also, like, what do you think? What do you think the things are that public defenders should know, especially public defenders in family defense? What do you think I should know about? What are folks missing? You can be an important person on the ground to help us figure out where we're missing the mark and how we can do better. I think when you're representing parents in a court system that can take their child forever, the stakes are pretty high. And so if dads are not getting the support they need, I need to know about it so I can support parents' attorneys to do things in a different way.
Thank you for that invitation to give input, to give ideas. I will continue doing my best to be a good conduit for those needs and those suggestions to be articulated. I think I'm encouraged by the coalition, the network of people that want to be cooperating with the Washington Fatherhood Council and that also want to be cooperating with what I'm doing with Washington Initiative for Boys and Men.
Great. I hope you come to the coalition meetings and share your perspective because I think that's really important for us in government to hear.
Thank you very much for speaking with me about all this.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you bringing attention to this important issue around parent navigators and our need to have them for fathers, hoping that the program comes back at one point so that fathers can really be supported in their children's lives.